The snow crunched sharp under my boots as I trudged toward Station Polaris, the wind howling a mournful dirge that clawed through my thermal suit and sank into my bones. But that wasn't what made my hands tremble now. My name's Owen Reed, a 35-year-old geologist who spent years chasing answers in the Earth's coldest cracks. A man who'd rather face a frozen abyss than a crowded room. But nothing prepared me for this. 3 days ago, I stood in the station's lab, my breath fogging the air, staring at my hands, black tendrils curling from my fingertips, ooze dripping from my palms, my skin peeling back to reveal bone pulsing with dark veins throbbing like a heartbeat not my own. The walls screamed with eyeless faces, their mouths gaping, black tongues lolling, and Mark Hensley, my comms tech, melted before my eyes, his skull splitting wide, a crystalline shard jutting from his chest, his flesh sloughing off in wet clumps, turning to boonsong that pooled on the floor, whispering my name, Owen, in a voice that wasn't his, low and wet, echoing from the shard as tendrils burst from his eyes, reaching for me. I screamed, my voice raw, my stomach heaving, terror choking me as the room shuddered, the ooze surging, pulling me down, and I knew I'd let it in and it wasn't letting me go. It started 3 days earlier, a late August mission in 2025, when the Arctic stretched endless around us, a blank white void hundreds of miles from anything alive, the air so cold it burned my lungs with every breath. I'd been tapped to lead a team to Station Polaris, a research outpost gone silent. No calls, no data, just nothing, for weeks, dragging us out here to find out why. I trudged ahead, my flashlight beam cutting through the swirling snow, my chest tight with unease, the silence unnatural, pressing down like a weight I couldn't shake. Eliza Kane, our biologist, walked beside me, her blonde hair tucked tight under her hood, her sharp eyes darting, her voice trembling despite her usual calm. Too quiet, Owen. Something's off. Mark Hensley, our comms tech, followed, his radio pack clanking, his gruff voice muttering, "Hope it's just a busted array. I'm not digging through this ice for fun." Inuk, an Inuit hunter we'd picked up for his knowledge of the land, trailed behind, his dark eyes narrowed, his breath fogging as he whispered, "The ice speaks here. Don't listen." His words prickling my neck, superstition I wanted to dismiss but couldn't quite shake. The station loomed ahead, its steel angles sharp against the white. Solar panels glinting dull under a weak sun. The turbine creaking slow, everything intact. Too intact, like it had been waiting for us. I pushed the door open, my hands trembling, the hum of lights flickering alive, the heaters purring soft, the air stale and heavy, stinking of damp rot, a sour tang that clung to my throat, twisting my gut. "Looks fine," Mark grunted, stepping in, his flashlight sweeping the hall, but his voice wavered, unsure, his eyes darting to the shadows. Eliza frowned, her beam jittering across the walls. Too clean, supplies stacked neat, bunks made tight, tools lined up like a museum. But the air buzzed, electric, my skin prickling, my hair standing on end, a wrongness I couldn't name sinking into my bones. "Nobody's here," she whispered, her voice tight, her hands clutching her pack, and I nodded, my breath short, leading us deeper, my boots sticking to the floor, black ooze, thin, dripping from cracks, pooling in corners, tendrils curling slow, alive, stinking of death. "What the hell is that?" Mark rasped, stepping back, his beam trembling as the tendrils brushed his boot, cold and wet, burning through the rubber, his curse sharp as he yanked away. We found them in the secure lab. The steel door latched tight from inside, scratches gouged deep, bloody words smeared across it. "Don't open." Dried black, glistening wet under my flashlight. My stomach twisted, my chest tight, dread flooding me as I fired up the plasma torch. Sparks flying, my hands shaking, my breath hitching as the lock gave after an hour, the door swinging open with a groan that echoed in the tight hall. 4 bodies slumped against the walls, lab coats rumpled, stained black, faces twisted in terror, mouths gaping wide, eyes gone, just black holes weeping ooze, their hands raw, nails torn to bloody stumps, claw marks raking the steel, the floor, their own skin, deep and jagged, flesh peeled back, bones glinting under the light. "Dehydration. Starvation," Eliza whispered, her voice cracking, her flashlight trembling as she knelt, her hands shaking, tears welling in her eyes. "They locked themselves in. Why?" I stared, my stomach churning, my legs weak, the ooze pooling under them, tendrils curling from their mouths, their eyes whispering, "Owen." Soft, wet, my own voice twisted back at me, low and guttural, sinking into my skull. I stumbled back, my breath short, terror clawing my gut, my hands trembling. Something was here, something alive, something wrong. Inuk stepped in, his face pale under his hood, his voice low, his knife drawn. They heard it. The voice beneath the ice. It takes you if you listen. I shook my head, my throat dry, my voice sharp. No, this is madness, not myths. But the hum grew, buzzing loud in my ears, the walls pulsing, ooze dripping faster, tendrils curling toward us, brushing my boots, cold and slimy, burning my skin through the fabric, my toes curling as it seeped in, sharp and alive. We need answers, I said, my voice steadying, shoving the fear down, my hands trembling as I led us out, my flashlight beam jittering, my chest tight with dread, the air heavier now, the hum a drone that vibrated in my bones. Split up. Eliza, logs. Mark, comms. Inuk, watch the halls. I ordered, my breath short, heading to the primary lab, the sour stink choking me, my skin prickling as the ooze spread, pooling at my feet, whispering, Owen, stay, low and wet, pulling at my mind. The lab was sterile, too sterile. Equipment gleaming, papers stacked, but the walls wept ooze, black veins branching out, pulsing like arteries. The air thick, stinking of rot and blood, my stomach twisting as I stepped in, my boots sticking, the hum louder, drilling into my skull. I found a hidden compartment behind a rack, its lid carved with jagged runes, geometric, wrong, glowing faint red under my flashlight. My hands trembling as I pried it open, my breath hitching. Inside, a crystalline shard, black as oil, sharp-edged the size of my fist, its surface swirling, refracting light into twisted shadows that crawled across the walls, whispering, Owen. Low, guttural, a voice from a throat full of dirt, sinking into my ears, my chest, my bones. My hand shook, reaching out, curiosity burning through my fear, my fingers grazing it. Sharp, cold, a jolt ripping through me, my arm numbing, black tendrils curling from my nails, ooze dripping, my skin peeling, burning hot and cold. My breath short as I yanked back, cursing, my chest heaving, terror flooding me. What the hell is this? I rasped, the shard pulsing, the room shuddering, faces pressing through the walls, eyeless, screaming, ooze pouring from their mouths, reaching for me. Cold and wet, brushing my legs. Owen! Eliza's voice cut through, sharp and panicked, her boots pounding as she burst in, her flashlight wild, her eyes wide, her face pale. Did you feel that? Mark followed, rubbing his temples, his voice shaky, his hands trembling. Heard it. Whispers, my name. Behind the static. Inuk stepped in, his face grim, his knife drawn, his voice low. It's waking. Don't touch it. His eyes darting to the shard, his breath fogging fast, his hands steady but tense. I clutched my hand, ooze dripping from my fingers, my skin blistering, my breath short, my stomach churning. It's alive, I whispered, my voice trembling, the shard humming louder, the walls growling, tendrils curling from the cracks, brushing my boots, burning deeper, my toes curling as it seeped in, sharp and cold, my chest tight with dread, my mind racing, something ancient, something wrong, something that knew my name. I stood there in the lab, my hand trembling, black tendrils curling from my fingertips, ooze dripping onto the floor, pooling dark and wet, stinking of rot and blood, burning my skin where it seeped from my peeled flesh, a sharp cold sting that twisted up my arm, the shard pulsed in its compartment, black and jagged, humming my name. Owen, low and guttural. A voice from a throat full of dirt sinking into my skull, my chest tight with dread, my stomach churning as the walls growled, faces pressing through, eyeless, gaping, black tongues lolling, dripping ooze that splattered my boots, reaching for me, cold and slimy, my breath short, terror clawing my gut. Eliza's eyes widened, her flashlight shaking, her voice cracking. What did you do, Owen? Mark stepped back, his hands trembling, his face pale. It's alive! Get rid of it! Inuk gripped his knife, his voice low, urgent. It's waking! Kill it now! His dark eyes darting, his breath fogging fast, his calm fraying as the hum grew, the room shuddering, tendrils curling faster, brushing my legs, burning deeper, my toes curling as they burrowed in, sharp and alive. I yanked my hand back, my breath hitching, my skin blistering, black veins pulsing under my flesh, my chest heaving as I rasped. We need to study it. Figure out what it is. Eliza shook her head, her voice trembling. No, it's wrong. Look at your hand. Mark's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. Study it? It's doing something to us. Burn it. I clutched my arm, the tendrils curling higher, my fingers numb, my stomach twisting with nausea, panic flooding me hot and cold. We can't just destroy it. We don't know what it'll do, I snapped, my voice steadying, shoving the fear down, my mind racing. Answers. I needed answers, not fire. Inuk stepped closer, his knife glinting, his voice low. It's the heart of the ice, old, hungry, it takes if you touch it. His eyes burning into mine, his calm cracking, his hands shaking now. The hum louder, the walls pulsing, ooze dripping faster, pulling around us, tendrils reaching, whispering, Owen, stay, soft, wet, pulling at my mind. Owen, we've got company. Eliza's voice cut through, sharp and panicked, her flashlight swinging toward the hall, her breath hitching as footsteps echoed. Slow, wet, slapping the steel floor, stinking of rot, a shadow stretching long and twisted under the flickering lights. I turned, my heart slamming, my flashlight trembling, the beam catching her, Dr. Vera Sokolov, or what was left of her, shambling toward us, her lab coat shredded, her skin peeling back in strips, revealing yellow bone beneath, cracked and pulsing. Her eyes gone, black holes weeping ooze, her mouth gaping, a tongue, long, black, slimy, lolling out, dripping onto her chest. Her voice a rasp. You touched it, Reed. It knows you now. My stomach dropped, my legs weak, terror choking me as she lurched closer, tendrils curling from her arms, her legs, her throat, black and wet, reaching for us, whispering, Owen. In that same guttural voice, my voice twisted and wrong. Vera? I croaked, my voice trembling, my flashlight shaking, my chest tight with dread, disbelief flooding me. She was here, alive but not alive, not human. Eliza screamed, stumbling back, her flashlight clattering, her hands clawing her hair. She's dead! She's supposed to be dead! Mark lunged, his voice raw. Get back! Swinging his wrench, cracking her skull, wet thud, black ooze spraying, her head splitting, tendrils bursting out, curling toward him, wrapping his arm, burning through his sleeve, his scream sharp as he yanked free, his skin blistering, red and raw. Enoch slashed his knife, cutting a tendril, black blood gushing, stinking of death, but more grew, curling from her chest, her mouth, her eyes, her voice gurgling. It's the crystal, beneath the ice, takes your soul, feeds on fear. And then the ooze surged, pouring from her throat, wrapping her like a shroud, pulling her down, under the floor, her scream choking wet as she melted, flesh sloughing off in clumps, bones snapping, turning to boonsong, tendrils wriggling, reaching for us. My stomach heaving, bile burning my throat as I backed away, my hands trembling, my scream stuck. We're leaving, now! Mark roared, his voice breaking, his hands shaking, blood dripping from his arm, his eyes wild, darting to the shard, the ooze, the walls, faces stretching, screaming, tongues lolling, dripping ooze that pooled faster, surging toward us. No, we need to know what it is, I snapped, my voice trembling, my chest tight, shoving the panic down, my mind racing. Answers, I needed answers, not escape. Eliza grabbed my arm, her grip tight, her voice shrill. Owen, she melted. It's killing us. Enoch stepped back, his knife dripping black, his voice low. It's the heart, old as the ice, feeds on blood, don't let it taste you. His eyes burning, his calm gone, his hands trembling as the hum grew, the shard pulsing, the room shuddering, tendrils curling from the walls, brushing my legs, burning deeper, my skin peeling, my breath short, terror flooding me. We can't just run. We'll take it with us, I rasped, my voice cracking, my hand throbbing, black veins curling higher, my stomach twisting with nausea, my mind screaming, Get out! Get out! The walls growled louder, ooze pouring from cracks, pooling around us, tendrils surging, curling toward Mark, wrapping his legs, burning through his pants, his scream raw as he swung his wrench. Crack! Smashing them back, black blood spraying, stinking of death, his skin blistering, red and raw, his voice breaking. It's everywhere! Burn it, Owen! Eliza stumbled to the console, her hands trembling, her flashlight clattering, her voice shrill. Logs, something, anything. She scrolled fast, her breath hitching. Here, don't sleep. It hears you. Crystal beneath the ice, old ritual, takes the waking. Owen, it's alive. My chest tightened, my breath short, dread sinking in. Ritual? I rasped, my hands trembling, the shard humming louder. Owen, stay. The walls shuddering, faces stretching, tongues reaching, dripping ooze that splattered my face, burning my cheeks, my eyes watering, my stomach heaving as the hum pulsed, my ears ringing, my skin prickling, black tendrils curling from my fingers, burning deeper, my mind fraying. We're not safe here, I whispered, my voice trembling, my legs weak. Terror choking me. Enoch lunged, his knife slashing the air, his voice sharp. It's the heart, kill it or it kills us. He swung at the shard, clang. Sparks flying, the hum roaring, the room shaking, ooze surging, tendrils wrapping his arm, cutting deep, blood spurting, his scream raw as he yanked free, his skin peeling, black veins curling up his hand, his eyes wild, darting to me. You woke it, Reed. Your blood! My stomach dropped, my chest tight, guilt flooding me hot and cold. I didn't. I choked, my voice breaking, my hand throbbing, ooze dripping, tendrils curling higher, burning my arm, my skin peeling, my breath short as the shard pulsed, whispering, Owen, stay, low and wet, pulling at my mind. Mark grabbed a flare, his voice raw, burn it now, lighting it, hiss, red flame flaring, his hands trembling, ooze surging toward him, tendrils wrapping his legs, pulling hard, his scream sharp as he fell, the flare clattering, his flesh blistering, melting, black ooze pouring from his mouth, his eyes bulging, splitting, tendrils bursting out, his body collapsing into one song, pooling on the floor, whispering, Owen, in his voice, twisted and wrong. I screamed, my voice raw, my stomach heaving, my legs trembling as I bolted. Eliza, run! Grabbing her arm, her flashlight clattering, her breath hitching, her eyes wide, darting to Mark's puddle, tears streaming as we stumbled out, Inuk behind, his knife slashing, ooze chasing, tendrils curling, the lab shuddering, faces screaming, the shard humming, Owen stay, louder, insistent, drilling into my skull. We hit the hall, my chest heaving, my breath short, the walls pulsing, ooze pouring, tendrils curling from cracks, brushing my legs, burning deeper, my skin peeling, my hands trembling, black veins curling up my arms, my stomach twisting with nausea, terror choking me. We've got to get out! Eliza yelled, her voice breaking, her hands clawing my arm, her flashlight gone, her breath fogging fast, her eyes wild, darting to the shadows, the hum buzzing, the floor cracking, ooze surging, pulling at our feet. My boots slipped, the ooze thick and wet, tendrils wrapping my ankles, cutting deep, blood mixing with black, my skin blistering, my scream raw as I kicked free, dragging Eliza with me, her sobs choking her hands trembling, her voice a whimper. It's everywhere, Owen, it's in us! Inuk stumbled behind, his knife slashing wild, black blood spraying, his voice sharp. The heart, it's calling! Cut it out! His blade caught a tendril, severing it. Wet snap, but more surged, wrapping his arm, cutting deep, blood spurting, his scream raw as he swung again, his skin peeling, black veins curling up his hand, his eyes wild, darting to me. You woke it, Reed! Your blood! My chest tightened, guilt flooding me hot and cold, my breath short, my hand throbbing, tendrils curling higher, burning my arm, my skin splitting, ooze dripping, whispering, Owen, stay, low and wet, pulling at my mind. I didn't know. I choked, my voice breaking, my legs trembling as I shoved Eliza forward. The hall stretching long, narrow, the ceiling dropping low, brushing my head, ooze dripping into my hair, my eyes burning sharp, my vision blurring, terror choking me. The hum louder, the walls growling, faces stretching, eyeless, gaping, tongues lolling, dripping ooze that splattered my face, burning my cheeks, my scream swallowed by the roar. The floor tilted, cracking wide, ooze pouring up, tendrils surging, curling toward us, faces forming, screaming, eyeless reaching for my legs, my arms cold and wet, burning deep. My skin peeling, my breath hitching as I stumbled, Eliza's hand slipping from mine, her scream sharp. Owen! Her legs snagged, tendrils wrapping tight, cutting through her pants, blood spurting, her skin blistering, peeling back, black veins curling up her thighs, her eyes wide, darting to me, tears streaming. Don't leave me! I lunged, my hands trembling, clawing at the tendrils, black and slick, burning my fingers, my skin splitting, ooze dripping, whispering, Owen, stay, louder, insistent, drilling into my skull. Hold on! I yelled, my voice raw, my chest tight, panic flooding me, but the tendrils yanked hard, her scream choking wet as her body twisted, her legs snapping, flesh sloughing off in clumps, turning to Boonsong, her eyes bulging, splitting, tendrils bursting out, her face melting, whispering, Owen, in a voice, twisted and wrong, pooling on the floor, reaching for me. I screamed, my stomach heaving, my legs trembling as I bolted, Inuk behind, his knife clattering, his voice breaking. It's taking her! Run! The hall shuddered, ooze surging, tendrils curling, faces screaming, the shards hum roaring. Owen, stay! Drilling into my skull, my chest, my bones. I hit the common room, my breath short, my hands trembling. Black veins curling up my arms, my skin peeling, ooze dripping, burning my hands, my stomach twisting with nausea, guilt choking me. Eliza gone, her scream echoing, her puddle pooling behind, tendrils wriggling, whispering, Owen, soft, wet, pulling at my mind. Inuk stumbled in, his arm raw, black veins curling up his hand, his knife gone, his eyes wild, darting, the heart, it's in the ice, cut it out. He yelled, his voice sharp, his hands trembling, blood dripping, mixing with ooze, the walls pulsing, faces stretching, tongues reaching, dripping ooze that splattered my face, burning my eyes, my scream raw as I backed away. The table held a stack of logs, Papers scribbled in panic. Don't sleep, it hears you. Crystal beneath the ice, old ritual, takes the waking. My stomach dropped, my chest tight, dread sinking in. Ritual? I rasped, my hands trembling, flipping pages, my fingers sticking, ooze dripping, whispering, Owen, stay. Louder, insistent, drilling into my skull. Enoch grabbed my arm, his grip tight, his voice low. It's the heart, old as the ice, feeds on blood. My people sealed it. Don't let it taste you. His eyes burning, his breath fogging fast, his calm gone, his hand trembling as the hum grew. The shard pulsing, the room shuddering, tendrils curling from the walls, brushing my legs, burning deeper, my skin peeling, my breath short, terror flooding me. We've got to destroy it. I yelled, my voice breaking, my chest tight, shoving the guilt down, my mind racing, answers, escape, anything. The walls roared, ooze pouring, tendrils surging, curling toward Enoch, wrapping his legs, cutting deep, blood spurting, his scream raw as he slashed with his hands, knife gone, black veins curling up his arms, his skin peeling, his eyes bulging, splitting, tendrils bursting out, his voice choking. Reed, run! His body twisting, flesh sloughing off in clumps, turning to Bunsong, pooling on the floor, whispering, Owen, in his voice, twisted and wrong, reaching for me. I bolted, my legs trembling, my chest heaving, my breath short, the ooze chasing, tendrils curling, the hall stretching, the shards hum roaring, Owen, stay! Drilling into my skull, my chest, my bones. I hit the main door, my hands trembling, black and slick, my fingers peeling, ooze dripping, burning my hands, my stomach twisting with nausea, terror choking me. Open it! I yelled, slamming the panel, my hands slipping, the green light blinking, the lock hissing, the door shuddering open, wind roaring in, cold and sharp, slicing my face. The noises stopped. Sudden, sharp. The silence slamming back, heavy, crushing, my ears ringing, my breath fogging fast, my chest tight with dread, my hands trembling, black veins curling up my arms, ooze dripping, burning my skin. My legs weak as I stumbled out, the snow blinding, the void stretching endless. No shadows, no faces, just white howling wind, my scream swallowed by the roar. I turned. The shard pulsed in the lab, tendrils curling from the walls, faces screaming, ooze surging, but it didn't follow. Trapped, growling low, a guttural moan echoing from the ice. Pain, hunger, rage, my stomach twisting, my chest heaving, relief flooding me hot and cold. It's stuck, I whispered, my voice trembling, my hands shaking, ooze dripping, tendrils curling slow under my skin, my eyes burning, hollowing, the hum fading, whispering, Owen, soft, wet, fading into the wind. I ran. Miles. Snow crunching, wind clawing, my legs trembling, my chest tight, my breath short, terror choking me, the ooze dripping, tendrils curling, my skin peeling, my hands black, my fingers numb, my stomach twisting with nausea, guilt flooding me. Eliza, Mark, Enoch, gone, their screams echoing, their puddles pooling, whispering my name. Evacuation came. 2 days, helicopter hum slicing the silence, my hands trembling, ooze dripping, hidden under gloves, my eyes burning, tendrils curling under my lids, my chest tight with dread as I boarded, the shard buried deep in the ice, unmarked, lost, my decision, my secret. Its growl fading, trapped, suffering, hungry, screaming in silence. Eliza's logs burned, Mark's radio smashed, Enoch's knife sunk. I told them madness took the team, my voice steady, my hands trembling, my skin peeling, ooze dripping slow, whispering, Owen, soft, wet, pulling at my mind. I got out. Me, Owen, the fool who touched the dark, who woke it, who survived, scarred but breathing, tendrils curling under my flesh, my eyes hollow, my hands black, the shards whisper faint, a hum in my chest, my life a shadow of what it was, haunted, hunted, but alive. It's out there, the faceless one, beneath the ice, trapped, clawing, gaudauden wie bignot. Its hunger endless, its voice silenced, suffering. I feel it every night in my bones, my blood, my breath. I learned, don't touch the old dark, don't listen when it calls, or it'll live in you, eat you slow. If you're out there, tell me, what would you do when the ice whispers your name? Run when the shadows hum, or touch it like I did. Drop it below. I need to know I'm not alone because it's still here in me, and I feel it clawing every night.